Well, maybe something that he'll do is he'll have a little warm up by taking Greenland or Cuba first. It sounds so crazy about taking Greenland, but it does
Yeah.
seem like he's really serious about it. And the Europeans, I think, are starting to realize, like, uh-oh,
Yeah.
we shouldn't be worried about an invasion from Russia. We should be worried about an invasion from the United States.
Right.
Let me
Well,
play
it's true.
the clip of Trump talking about Greenland real quick, and then we'll go.
If we don't take Greenland, Russia or China will. And I'm not letting that happen. If we don't take Greenland, Russia or China will take Greenland. And I am not going to let that happen.
Is there any deal they can offer you? Either like
Yeah, sure. I'd love to make a deal with them. It's easier. But one way or the other, we're going to have Greenland.
We're going to have it one way or the other. Because
Yeah.
apparently Russia and China are about ready to take Greenland. I mean, I don't know if the people in Greenland are aware of that. They think like,
Yeah, right. Or the Danes, or nobody else needs to be aware of that. Yeah, no, that's completely absurd. It's completely absurd. There's looking at Greenland. Actually, it would be the easiest in one sense, right? There's only 57,000 people who live there, if even that. And they're not armed. He jokes about it. They have 2 dog sleds, and it's probably not much of an exaggeration. So he could take it. And he could even, because there's so few people and they're not very wealthy, there's a chance he can just buy them off too. You give each one of them $100,000. That's not even $6 billion. It's chump change to the U.S. And they could agree to become your citizens. That's a possibility. Okay.
it'd be nice if they gave us some
this
money.
would be, yeah. So anyway, this is something that he definitely could achieve, and there's just nothing that the Europeans or the Greenlanders themselves could do to prevent it. I think that's true. On the other hand, there's just, like with the other attacks, you could see some argument, for doing it, at some sort of geopolitical interest at stake. Like in the case of Venezuela, you can say, well, it was a message, this was a country that was, openly, the government of which was openly condemning the Zionists. It was allying itself with China and Russia, was poised to become a member of BRICS. And we just knocked them flat on their, back here. And everybody sees in Latin America, this is it's a message to them, don't even think about it. And, that may not succeed, but it possibly, then it just may. Anyway, you can at least make this argument, right, that this is there's some sort of perceived geopolitical interest. I don't agree with that argument, but you can make the argument. In the case of Greenland, there's just no reason. We already have a military base there. It's already part of NATO. There's no reason why we have to take it over. There's no chance that Russia or China are going to try to take it. That's all absurd. The whole thing is just so ridiculous. And in the end, there are going to be obvious costs, diplomatic costs, especially in our relations with Europe. And it's just going to put NATO under huge strains. So it's an easy one, but it's probably, makes even less sense than some of the other operations that he's considering.
Well, maybe Trump is playing 54D chess, and this is his way to end the Ukraine war by moving into Greenland and having NATO be dissolved through this action. Yeah. Do you think that NATO would fall apart from this?
I don't think so. I'm just looking at the Europeans. A lot of them are saying, some of them are saying, we got to be tough here. We got to send troops over there. That's not going to happen. I don't see them doing that. But others are already saying, oh man, he's serious. We really, we don't have any cards to play here. Let's just make a deal. And I think that's what's going to happen. They'll just roll over. If he takes it, it will put the alliance under strain. It will create anger, but with this current, the current leadership of Europe is not going to resist it. They will express some dissatisfaction. They'll make some mealy-mouthed statements. Again that will amount to nothing. And NATO will still be there, but I would say that NATO will be weakened as a result of this, because it is, it obviously is something that strikes at the heart of it. And people, even if the leadership doesn't see it or won't admit it or won't act on that fact, there have to be others within Europe, including the opposition parties that are looking at this and saying, this is wrong. We have to do something different. These guys that have actually have appeased the bully in this case and have, accepted this outright, theft of European territory. These people have to go. We have to do something different. But that may not work out itself immediately. It may take years before we see the consequences.
Yeah. What I'm afraid is that the argument Trump might make is like, you're so worried about Russia. You're in this war with Russia. Well, and if you want us to help out, we need Greenland. Greenland is going to be our big base of our operations in some type of larger war with Russia. And then that just starts to put us a little bit more closer to this horrifying potential conflict, a direct conflict between the United States and Russia. I wonder if that's how they will, that the Europeans will make it palatable for themselves to say, okay, well, we're in an existential battle right now, because that's the way they feel. They believe they're in war with Russia, and war with Russia is coming. We need the United States on our side. Having the United States and Greenland to help us with this, that'd be perfect.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I think, even if you're right, but even if they are very upset, and I think they will be upset about the U.S. simply taking Greenland, they will be greatly angered, alarmed, and all that. Yeah, they still are not going to abandon their crusade against Russia, and that will prove to be decisive. They'll stop and think and say, well, wait a second, we know we can't do this on our own. We need the U.S., we can't have any real rift with the U.S. right now. We're just going to have to shut up and put up, and even talk nice to Trump because we want him to send us arms.
Right. Yeah. No, I think this kidnapping of Maduro was a very dangerous moment, because it has started something, I think, in Trump, this megalomania. Be shortly after that, all of a sudden he's talking about, Colombia. He mentioned bombing Mexico. He's talking about taking Greenland. He's talking about taking Cuba, talking about bombing Iran. It's coming in hot. And if he has another success, like he does Greenland, I think this will start to fuel this even further. He will start to make the world in his own mind, how he wants it to be. And he does feel like he has that right. It almost feels like he feels like it was his destiny, and I think that's what's happening. And so that's scary. So if he takes Greenland, I think we can see him to continue on down this megalomaniac path. Do you think so? Or?
Yeah, well, I'm afraid you're right. I mean, listen to the guy. I mean, he's, the megalomania is not some label that we're attaching to him. He's just like you couldn't find a better example of it in a human being. I just listened to everything he's done. It's been the first time it's ever been done in history, or it's the greatest in history, or the greatest, since World War II, or the largest since World. It's all that. He really has the sense that, okay, they're probably going to have to just completely, I don't know, just remove all the faces from Mount Rushmore and replace it with one big face of Trump.
Yeah,
I think that's the way he's thinking.
Well, Dad, we haven't even hit one full year of his presidency. There's no way we're making it through all three, are we? Without some catastrophic war. I mean, think about how this year has started. It's only 12 days into the new year.
Right.
We're talking about taking.
The thing is, I guess this is all I can say. Okay, I'm worried about the megalomania. But maybe there's a corner of his brain that understands there's certain places he can't go. Again, he is, for example, Venezuela is a weak country. One thing that I was reading, it's not clear. We've talked about, and I tend to believe the theory that there was a stand-down order. Now, one thing is that Max Blumenthal doesn't believe there was, and I think you have to listen to him because he, actually knows Venezuela very well. He's been there on several occasions, had long interviews with leaders, including the current, acting president of Venezuela. And so he knows the place, and he just doesn't believe that could have happened, and that it was combination of like successful electronic warfare and maybe other military strikes on the air defense system, and just, confusion and incompetence. And this morning that I was reading that, we knew that they had S-300s, which is, again, it's an older system that the Russians provide, but it's also a very effective one. And apparently they weren't even hooked up. And that was a result of it. Even though they knew there was this threat, they just didn't get their act together. So anyway, I'm just saying that this is a weak country, and I'm sure it has strengths in other aspects, but it has a very weak military and apparently an incompetent military, at least when it comes to these, big ticket items or whatever. Now, I think their guerrilla bands, if it ever comes to that, will probably be very, very effective. And it would be very stupid for us to go in there on the ground. But this was a weak country. And I think, we've already theorized that that's really why he went after Venezuela. He was having frustrations dealing with Russia and China. You just can't push them around, but you can push around these other countries. You can have your way. And then even more so Greenland. And maybe that's what's going to happen. Now, Iran is sort of an in-between case. It's not a Russia. It's not a China. But it can hit back. And so that's the dangerous one. I think that he has enough sense. Actually, he has pulled back all in all, with many exceptions, but all in all, he has pulled back from Russia. He launched that economic war against China, but then he called it off. I mean, that shows that there is at least some sort of, island of realism within his mind. And we hope that it stays there. Now, again, Iran is that in-between case, which makes it a dangerous one, where their miscalculations could occur. You can see it's much weaker than Russia or China, but it's much stronger than Venezuela. And he may decide that it's weak. There'll be people telling him that that's true and that he can do another kind of Venezuela kind of operation. And then much to his chagrin, it doesn't work out that way.
Yeah. No, I am very worried about Iran because I think the next time the U.S. strikes, Iran is done. There won't be this ceasefire, symbolic bombing of a U.S. base that's forewarned. I think that this is going to be it. And then, when American soldiers get killed, then what happens here in the United States? That's the big question. It's just like, do people just automatically rally around the flag and say, let's go take them out,
Yeah.
Or will they be rational and say like, wait, why were our boys there in the first place? Why are we trying to overthrow this government? Why are we at war with Iran? I mean, Iranians aren't a big part of our life here in the United States. It just doesn't make sense.
Yeah. Yeah. So, right. It is a very dangerous situation. I guess I would put, the two, I think, real areas of concern, areas for potential major conflict or even catastrophe are Iran and the tanker war. I think just this morning I was reading that the UK was had discovered some kind of legal justification for seizing so-called shadow tankers. Say, oh my,
Do you see this all leading to a large war? I mean, we have the military budget increase talks, all this bravado.
Well, no, there's a potential for it. It's just like, again, we may get lucky. A lot of these wars, like you never know, maybe an air operation against a bombing of Iran, if it was quick and well executed, maybe it would succeed. But it's sort of like every time you do that, it's like walking into a minefield. And maybe you pull it off and you get out and you don't step on a mine. But one of these days you're going to step on a mine, and which is other words to say that the conflict is going to really explode and it's going to be something that you can't contain, and then we're all in trouble. So, yeah, that's the reason why each time you have a successful operation, it's like, well, he went into the minefield and he came back and he's all right. He said, let's just send somebody, let's go to this mine. It's eventually a mine's going to explode if you keep on doing that. You may get lucky, you have a lucky streak, but eventually you're going to step on a mine.
Yeah, I think we'll step on a mine. Maybe you're right. Maybe he has a little bit of realism in the back of his mind, but I think that just means he'll probably start with Cuba and Greenland. And then when he has successes there, it'll just, any idea that caution will be gone at that point. It's like, all right, yeah. I mean, just think about the ego boost I think Trump is having, the idea that he was able to kidnap a president. That's an insane thing to do. And I think that just kind of made him just feel like, what, I can just, And then there was even that talk about like, it's like, would you kidnap Putin? And he's like, oh, well, I don't need to do that. But like, as if he could. That was kind of almost the air that he had. Like, yeah, we're so powerful. I could just, I kidnap Xi Jinping. I could kidnap Putin. Like, it's insanity. So we'll see. I mean, do you think about his rhetoric on Cuba? Do you think that's real as well? Do you want me to play you a clip?
It's too early. Okay, sure. Because I've just seen some headlines. I haven't looked very closely at that.
All right,
so we can look at that
one about it.
Right.
Cuba is ready to fall.
Yes.
Cuba looks like it's ready to fall. I don't know if they're going to hold out. But Cuba now has no income. They got all of their income from Venezuela, from the Venezuelan oil. They're not getting any of it. And Cuba literally is ready to fall. And you have a lot of great Cuban Americans that are going to be very happy about this.
Are you considering U.S. action in Cuba?
We're not. I think it's just going to fall. I don't think we need any action. It looks like it's going down. It's going down for the count. You ever watch a fight? They go down for the count, and Cuba looks like it's going down.
Okay. Yeah, just Lindsey Graham there.
Yeah, so he's
looked
giddy.
like he was,
he's giddy.
Yeah, I know. It's just oh my.
Yeah.
Well, there he wasn't threatening military action.
That's
He
true.
just felt it was going to fall. The thing is, it's like they can buy their oil from Russia or from other places. But then there's this whole other issue, the tanker war. Are they going to try to seize Russian tankers delivering oil to Cuba? And then are the Russians going to allow that to happen? That's the dangerous part of it. That's.
So where do you see this going, Dad? Can you look into your crystal ball a little bit and just tell me? Do you think that? Are we looking at? Are we looking at a potential world war? I mean, that just sounds insane to say, but I think, should we prepare as citizens? And if there is a major war, what does that mean for us? What happens? Are we going to have trouble buying groceries? I mean, are we going to be looking at conscription?
Again, it's just like, right. Again, if it's a world war, it could very easily involve China. And if it involves China, then we have real problems because so many of our goods, that we have come to expect and enjoy actually come from China. So, you could have empty shelves as far as that go. But then the real danger, of course, is that when you talk about a conflict between superpowers is that it could go nuclear. And that's, it's not inevitable. Sometimes people talk like it's inevitable. It's not inevitable, but there is a real chance. Because again, both sides are armed to the teeth, and if one side gets a definite upper hand, well, it would be, the Russians aren't going to be attacking the U.S., but the U.S. could be in there in Ukraine. There are people that are pushing for that, and then the Russians could see a real threat to their own existence. Now, I don't think that even if we do intervene significantly in Ukraine, that we'll be able to defeat Russia, and that Russia will be able to hold the line and push back. But then the danger is that the U.S. isn't going to accept that kind of humiliation. It's bad enough if their proxy loses. That's a kind of humiliation, right? But if they lose directly, is that something that the U.S. is going to countenance, or will they go nuclear? These are the sort of things that we're going to face if we have an actual world war. So let's just not even try to get close, please,
Yeah, I really hope so. But I just feel like things have been set in motion now that can't be undone. Like if the U.S. just kind of stopped, what would happen? I mean, it's kind of the same thing with Israel. Once you start the killing, the bloodletting, it becomes difficult to stop it. And once Trump starts, bombing more countries, invading them, takes Greenland, can we stop that? I mean, and then if you do stop, then what happens? Just like with Israel, it's like, oh, sorry, we committed to half a genocide. We're still trying to ethically cleanse, but there's a ceasefire. That's not going to work. We have kind of a limbo area right now, but it's not over. And Israel has set things in motion for their own country and our country that can't be undone now. That will eventually lead to some type of, it will lead to the end, I think, of Israel.
Right.
And also here in the United States. Like, what happens if we stop? I mean, the amount of debt that we have, you know, the anger that's around the world, or it's just.
Yeah, no. Whenever you launch a war, you don't know what you're getting into. It's just war is like fire. It's like setting fire to the prairie, you know, and maybe your plan was just to burn these 10 acres. But then the wind picks up and it just, you know, it starts to roar across the whole prairie. That's the way it is with wars, you know, again and again. How many wars were supposed to be over in 2 weeks? Like our own Civil War or World War I, they're supposed to be a brief war, and they, you know, ended up going on for years and resulting in the deaths of, of millions. So it's just, and then one of the problems now is just like with these, let's say, you know, these various taboos have been violated. And maybe, the previous administrations were hypocritical. We knew that often they did things, you know, they always tried to cloak it in the language of human rights, but it was just raw geopolitical interest really was what was the motivation, and places like Libya and Serbia and so on and so forth. But again, it's that was hypocrisy. But hypocrisy is, there's that old saying that hypocrisy is the tribute that vice pays to virtue. In other words, you're still respecting, you're afraid enough of some sort of moral censure or harm to your reputation that you try to pretend that you're not doing what you're doing. And in that way, you're still respecting that there are limits. But now that's just been with Trump, it's just been, and with the Netanyahu, it's been cast aside. And so we are in new territory. And then with the frequency of conflicts, it's just like as war starts to become normalized, the unthinkable starts to become thinkable. And, that's where we are. We seem to be just drifting towards the abyss here,
Yeah, well, if the United States so openly casts aside international law, then we have moved into a different realm, and there's no putting that back together again, right? Because it's all based on trust. And now that we know that it's been kind of a phony international anyways, because we set the rules, but at least we pretended to abide by them. But now if we're just, when Trump is asked about international law, it's like, who cares about international law? That's pretty much what he says. So
right.
Then that means that the only way forward is that if he backs down, then all of a sudden the United States is in this position where it's openly stated that it doesn't believe in international law. We can't go back to that now with the damage is irreparable in that sense. So the only way forward then for Trump to have any type of legacy is to remake the world through some, massive war probably, right? I think that's...
Well,
I mean, how else?
Yeah,
because what else can he do? Like I said, what happens if we stop now? We've already destroyed international law. We've destroyed our public image and our soft power. We are actively engaged in hot proxy wars around the world. We kidnapped a president, and we didn't even do a regime change. We didn't even pretend that it's about the socialists, because that government's still in power. It's just naked imperialism now.
Yeah. Well, I'll say this is the best case scenario, and that is that, again, there is that realist part of Trump's brain is still there and is resisting the megalomania. He'll go for Greenland, and part of that is, just pure ego. Like it's like the first president to have acquired new territory since, who was it? I can't remember. We have to go back many, many decades. And he's just singing statues to myself, my face on my own mountain, that kind of thing. And maybe he'll be satisfied by that and understand that, okay, he can't get the same things dealing with these other adversaries. Yeah, he will limit it to the Western Hemisphere. And maybe even Cuba say, hey, there's some problems here. And I'm already the greatest president of all time. Let's just hope for that. But I'm just maybe I'm.
Do you believe that? I mean,
as Mark Slobodka says, hope is the death of analysis. It's wishful thinking. Just I would say that it's within the realm of possibility. That's like the best case scenario. It's not like that couldn't happen. Maybe he'll stop, at the abyss, and maybe he'll just again stick with the low hanging fruit. To switch metaphors. And we can hope for, it's ugly, but it keeps us out of World War III. And maybe, in the case of Russia, he'll still, he'll stop short of providing any real security guarantees and keep, no fly zones, no boots on the ground. So far, he's resisted that. And even Biden did, right? And maybe that will stick. And if that's so, and if he can resist the temptation to become involved in a war with Iran, which I don't really have any confidence in that. But if so, we may be okay. It will be just a wild ride, but maybe we can survive these next 3 years. And then, we say that with Trump, but who knows look, Biden really wasn't any better. I mean, I was actually, when it came to Russia, which is really the scariest thing, where it is most likely that we could see World War III begin. Biden, if anything, was worse than Trump. And then who knows what kind of Democrat will come in and this Democrat likely, instead of rolling back the things that Trump has done, he'll build on it and just use it, kind of emphasize different enemies. Now it's Russia, which is actually even really the greater danger. So, in other words, I guess we're saying I don't see an end to these troubles.